Okay, so our next speaker is David Wood from the London Futurists. David was one of the pioneers of the smartphone industry and is now an independent futurist. As co-founder of Symbian, the creator of the world's first successful smartphone operating system, David has spent 25 years envisioning, designing and implementing and avidly using smartphone devices. As chair of the London Futurists, David has organised regular meetings in London since 2008 on futurist and techno-progressive topics. As principal of the consultancy Delta Wisdom, David provides advice to business organisations and governments around the world on anticipating and shaping future scenarios. He was the editor of the volume Anticipating 2025, a guide to the radical changes that may lie ahead and whether or not we're ready, and his own book, Smartphones and Phones and Beyond. He's been described as one of the most candid and revealing books in technology executive has ever written. He has a triple first-class mathematics degree from Cambridge and undertook doctoral research in philosophy of science. In 2009, he was included in T3's list of 100 most influential people in technology, and he's been director of Humanity Plus since 2013 and fellow of the IEET since January 2015. That is quite an introduction. So would you please welcome David Wood.
Let's go back to the start of this session when we saw that lovely video by Federico Pistono, which ended with the suggestion, let's create something amazing. And creating the post-scarcity society would indeed be something amazing. But what I want to cover is things that might be stopping us from creating that post-scarcity society. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I want to talk us through 4 big blockages which might prevent us from achieving that amazing outcome, but also talk about 4 things we can do to actually give us the energy and the insight and the momentum to get to that outcome. As you heard, my name's David Wood. I've had the privilege of chairing London Futurists since 2008, where we look regularly at radical scenarios for the future. I run my own consultancy, where occasionally I work with governments, more often with organisations and businesses, talking about anticipating the future. And full disclosure, quite a lot of what I'm going to be saying in the next 25 minutes comes from one of Britain's newest and smallest, so far, political parties, the Transhumanist Party, which is committed for techno-progressive initiatives. So the vision I have in mind for this amazing outcome, the Transhumanist Vision, which I think can be achieved by 2040, in a generation's time, if we get our act collectively together. There's about a 50% chance that we might do this. It's one in which there's an abundance of energy. We're not short of energy, clean energy, because of enhancements and improvements to green technology, not just present-day green technology, but next-generation green technology. There'll be an abundance of healthy food due to improvements in agriculture and improvements in synthetic biotechnology. Be an abundance of all the material goods that people actually need through enhancements to nanotechnology, that's molecular scale manufacturing, recycling of waste. There'll be an abundance of health, affordable health for everybody, via the enhancements in rejuvenation biotechnology. Not just health in our bodies, but also health in our minds, where we're no longer victim to depression or emotional problems, where we have not just improved rationality, but also improved psychological intelligence, improved social intelligence, we might even say improved spiritual intelligence, all because we're improving our understanding of what's going on in this most complex organ in our brain. So that's improvements in cognotech. And all of this will give us, in this envisioned future, an abundance of time for creativity, in which most of the work that currently we spend a lot of our time doing will be done better, more effectively by automation. All of this underpinned by yet more technology, improvements in robotics, friendly AI, and technology for better collaboration, collab tech. So this vision I've got of the future, as you can see, it's full of the fruits of The wise use of accelerating technology, which I'll talk about in a moment, is in principle enabled by positive feedback cycles. So sometimes this vision is called a techno-progressive vision, where the word progressive emphasizes this is to make humanity come to a better state. This isn't just technology for technology's sake. It's not just technology for more gadgets or for more consumer items that we spend our money on. It's technology to bring humanity to a humanity plus state, a kind of humanity 2.0. So I said this is enabled in principle by positive feedback cycles. And this is the biggest engine of change the world has ever seen. Technology has caused more change in the last 100 years than certainly in the 1,000 before that. Technology may cause more change in the next 25 years than in all history so far up. And the driver for this is positive feedback cycles in which there are more and more people around the world. And these people around the world, they're not just mouths to be fed. They're not just emitters of waste. They're also viewed more positively as the source of ideas, the source of innovation, the source of technology, the source of solutions. These are people around the world who are educated in unprecedented levels, not just academically through more PhDs, but people who have got practical skills which are shared around the world, which is why there are more solution building blocks available than at any time in history. Guess what? Some of these solution building blocks includes enhancements to the technology of education, whether it's amazing YouTube videos, wikis, massive online open courses, and open source. So there's a positive feedback cycle there too. More people build better technology for education, so more people are better educated. Also, the technology improves the networking too. So there's lower barriers of entry, more tools and techniques, and as a result we have more engineers, more entrepreneurs, more designers than ever before, all contributing new solutions in an accelerating pace. More people educating, more people integrating, and some of the tools are also leaping forward at great pace. Better artificial intelligence, V1 of artificial intelligence, and better V2 of artificial intelligence, which is the deep learning revolution, which is really transforming more and more fields of science, technology, and automation. So that's why, in principle, I say we can get to that amazing future in around one generation's time. And just to be clear, 3 points of clarity. This vision that I have for the future, this transhumanist vision, it's not meant to be an unstable, transient thing, quickly consuming all the Earth's resources with all these more people living better lives. On the contrary, this vision is a sustainable future in which resources are coming from renewable sources, primarily from the sun and from wind, and most of what we use will be recycled due to improved use of technology and improved circular economy. Second, this is not a static thing. I'm not offering here a utopia, a perfect vision. I believe that once we establish this better society, there'll still be lots of change. So transhumanists like to talk about an extropia, a journey, rather than a utopia. And third, the most important thing, that although I've described this virtuous cycle, which I say is capable of getting us through an incredible amount of new positive technology, there's by no means any inevitability about this. We can't just sit back and cheer from the sidelines saying, yes, I've read it's going to be predicted, this is going to happen by 2040 or whenever, therefore that's great. Many things could go badly wrong en route. And the task of futurists is to anticipate the obstacles and to figure out the best actions we can take. And that's what I'm going to be covering in this talk. And the first thing that can go wrong is that there are other kinds of positive feedback cycles in which not just good things are being magnified, such as better technology, but also bad things are being magnified. And if we take the fact that the world's getting warmer, significantly warmer, there's not so much about it in the news recently, maybe we got fatigued on this issue, but this issue isn't going away. And guess what? As the Earth heats up, the ice at the poles melts and gets replaced by water. And the ice no longer reflects so much light out into space, and water instead absorbs it. And so as the Earth gets warmer, it gets warmer again. Another aspect of this vicious positive feedback cycle is that many greenhouse gases, which have been long buried, methane, deep in the Siberian tundra, some on the seafloor, it's been there for millennia, huge amounts, is ready to be heated up as the Siberian tundra melts, and lots of methane will be released into the atmosphere, yet again accelerating this. We're getting more chaotic weather. As a result of chaotic weather, there's an increase in mass migrations and the risk of greater political dysfunction. Governments and peoples unable to take rational action. So this is an example of a bad positive feedback cycle, which might, alas, come to fruition quicker and more destructively than the positive feedback cycle that I've been talking about. And I see this bad feedback cycle as a prime example of the failure of the market. Because although the market has done great things in encouraging lots of other technology, this is a case when the market forces, the existing companies that are doing very well out of the carbon-based energy sources, they're holding on to their power too long, they are pursuing short-term profits, and as a result of the market not correcting that, we're getting into this bad feedback cycle. And we're seeing there highlighted in red at the top of the screen the first of the four major obstacles to this better future, and that is the obstacle of inertia. Social inertia, where things keep staying the same. Psychological inertia, where we keep thinking the same because that's what we used to be thinking. Economic and political inertia. I'll talk later about how we can overcome it. The other kind of thing that can go wrong is that many of these positive feedback cycles, which have the potential to do so much good, like curing all these diseases, which I'm listing here, that it doesn't work because, again, of market failure. What I'm listing here from the DNDi website, which is the site for Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative, are various diseases which are having devastating effect, mainly in parts of the world where people don't have so much money to pay for drugs. Whether it's malaria, which is killing one child every minute in sub-Saharan Africa, childhood HIV, filarial diseases such as elephantiasis, diseases, frankly, that I don't really know the names of, but they are having such widespread effect in impoverished parts of the world. And to cut to the chase, these diseases, these neglected diseases, account for at least 11%, some people would say more, of the global disease burden, but new drugs are hardly tackling them at all. Of the 850 new therapeutic products that came into the market in that 11-year time period, only 4% of them were described as targeting these diseases, and of brand new chemical entities, only 1%. So here is another case of market failure. The technology is not, in this case, being driven by the market to do the thing that would be long-term good for humanity. Instead, on the whole, the funding is going elsewhere. So one aspect that is irrational about our current society is that so many people are still holding on to belief that the markets will always, on the whole, do things well. In many cases, the markets have done tremendous things. The technology industry that I was in, the smartphone industry, which I worked in for 25 years, brought forward tremendous alignment of many factors which caused products to be created, which indeed have made many lives around the world much better. But there are many other examples of markets failing. We heard a few minutes ago about the illogicality of aspects of the finance setup. I think that some of the ways in which the markets work is equally flawed. And a couple of books from just a few years ago which highlight that, I think, in a very compelling way. Ways in which even the Telegraph, the Times, and the Economist had to describe, in the case of John Cassidy's book, as Book of the Year. Not that markets are wrong, but that if we leave markets by themselves, frequently they will fail to drive the right long-term behavior. So these positive cycles that I spoke about, they need to be driven, first of all, by the scientific possibility that the technology will work. The nanotechnology is driven by things in quantum mechanics. The various other enhancements in healthcare is driven by the scientific possibilities with genomics. These things do not come into being overnight. There's a long time before the various engineers, of which there are many, but it still takes a long time for them to work together, often investing lots of money, to turn these scientific possibilities into engineering reality, to turn the possibilities of better green technology, for example, into actual products which are low cost enough and widespread enough to be fully deployed. The third leg of the stool, in some cases, is the desire of the marketplace to purchase these goods. And this has worked in the technology industry, at least in the IT industry. It's led people to want to buy new products, which has caused companies to invest. But often, as I've said, this is missing. And often this needs more than just the desire of the marketplace. It needs strong leadership in a way that extends beyond short-term economic vision. And I look at, for example, this person. You may recognize him, John F. Kennedy, when he went to the Rice Stadium in Houston, Texas in 1962. He laid out a vision which I think is worth looking at for a moment as a model that we can follow if we are looking to achieve truly this post-scarcity society. He said, we choose to go to the moon, not just because we're going to make a quick buck out of it. It's not the short-term economic reasons we go there. We go there in this decade, it was a long vision, and do these other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because this goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. And he went on to describe this whole Apollo project as potentially the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Well, I think the building of a post-scarcity society will be even more of a great adventure, even in some ways more dangerous and more hazardous. But we need this kind of compelling vision to organize society more than just the economic forces. There are some other examples we can look at from history of great projects which have been done in this way, not just for short-term economic goals, such as in this country, 3 generations ago, our great-grandparents organized and formed the National Health Service. Further, at the same time in the world, the victors of the Second World War decided not to be punitive in extracting short-term reparations from the countries that had been devastated by the war, but they decided to invest for long-term benefit through the Marshall Plan. We can look at CERN, the particle physics laboratory, which has been created as a great adventure in humanity, not because of short-term financial benefits. And we can look at the EU Brain Project. But I think these are only just the glimpse of what we should be doing. And my own list of the Apollo projects that we all need to get behind and which needs this dramatic visionary leadership, they're the projects I already mentioned right at the beginning of my talk. That we should be accelerating the development and deployment of green technology, synthetic biotech, and so on. Some of these are making reasonable progress. Others, I fear, are not going to make it. Others are being strangled by inertia and by the market failures. We need to get behind them. So if we want this to happen, we need more than market forces. We need a decades-long vision. A vision which is going to be able to unite and inspire and organize a sustained, progressive coalition. And I'll talk more about each of these factors in a moment. A vision of technology for the sake of a better humanity. And we need also, frankly, to change a lot of mindsets around the world. Or, as the Zeitgeist Movement would say, we need to change the prevailing zeitgeist. Away from something that's a bit diminutive and timid into something more optimistic and open, a mindset I will call the Transhumanist Mindset. So that's the third of the main factors I'm going to speak about as enabling us to make this great transition. And there's a fourth, which I'll come to in a minute. The Transhumanist Mindset basically says that we can do better for humanity, and we must do better. We will go beyond the limitations of current human nature and human society, and we will get, through wise use of technology, to something better. The fourth initiative we need to take, I'll mention in a moment. I'll just hold that one in suspense for the time being. So what's going to go wrong? And what are these obstacles? I already talked about inertia. And the longer I live and the more I work in society, the more I work in business, the more I see inertia as being such a big, big problem. When I work in industry, for example, I talk about the giants of the mobile phone industry from just 10 years ago, all of whom are now a fraction of their former self, because basically they got stuck in doing the things which they were previously good at and couldn't take advantage of new opportunities. If we go back further, there's a whole generation of companies, once upon a time known as the Massachusetts Miracle, which created the best computers of that generation, mini computers, but all of them failed because of their inertia, because of their processes to make the transition to the next generation of computers, which is PCs. We can talk about the failures of companies, great companies, to handle the transition to digital music, digital photography, digital home video watching, digital books, digital newspapers, digital encyclopedias, and even the next phase of search. Plenty of examples of companies, great companies, which had done wonderful things in their past, which were left behind and could not take advantage of new opportunities. But inertia doesn't just apply in the corporate field. The mindset, the organizational processes, they apply very much in the broader social field and in the broader political field. And to break this down, we need to highlight a really transformative vision, a vision of what the good ahead may be, but also a vision of what's going to happen if we don't make these changes. And we've got to break people out of their current complacency, which often goes together with inertia, and we've got to show them this is really a life or death thing. We have to overcome this mindset, which is also there. A mindset which is too ready to accept the status quo. And let me briefly contrast the mindset, which I'm calling this diminutive mindset, with the transhumanist mindset. We talk to people as to why there isn't more change. They'll say, well, frankly, people are, well, it's human nature, isn't it? We're just selfish at core a lot of the time. We're lazy, we're violent, we're deceptive. We've got to organize society to therefore punish all these wicked things, and more positively to organize it around human competitiveness. This is the only way in which society is going to survive. People are obliged to work, and if they're not working, they're obliged to make every effort to search for work, otherwise they don't deserve pay. People need to learn to accept that in any case this is all only temporary, that we are prone to aging, decline and death, and there's nothing much can be done to change it, because in the end people, they may go through phases, but human nature can't really be changed. And that is a prevailing mindset which I want to challenge with the transhumanist mindset, that people on the contrary can be supportive, energized, they can be deeply creative. Even if you think they're lazy, they can do tremendous pieces of work. And instead of organizing everything around competitiveness, we can look instead to organize more around collaboration. And instead of encouraging people that all of you need to get jobs regardless of whether it's a good use of your native talent, we can look forward to a transhumanist vision in which more of the work, increasingly all of it, will be done by robots, leaving us humans free to be truly creative, to do the things that are truly within our grasp. We can anticipate overcoming the decline of aging, we can anticipate and create rejuvenation therapies, and we can evolve under our own intelligent design, if you like, under our own conscious control, to a better stage of humanity within one generation. But still, this diminutive mindset is widespread, and one of the reasons is people are holding on to it because, frankly, they are fearful. They are fearful of the threats that they think may come around because of change. That's why we need, and our fourth ingredient to actually overcoming the obstacles is we need to be better at visibly, proactively listing the risks in the transition, listing the risks that could go wrong, and showing comprehensively, not just in vague terms, how we can actually go through them. People are fearful of risks of this new world, partially because they actually just dislike some of the picture that I and other speakers have been talking about. They feel, well, in some ways it might be a better society, but we will lose the core human values that are really important to us. And so, thank you. I'd prefer to keep my work. I'd prefer to keep aging and death. I'd prefer to keep the various aspects of competitiveness, which is in present-day society. And it's dressed up more positively than that, I can tell you. But people will say they dislike the world for that. And they're fearful on that count. Other people, they say, well, actually, I could quite like some of this new society, but I'm just afraid it would be a society in which only a small number of people benefited, and I'm likely, people think, they think they're likely to stay in perhaps the 90% that they fear may not get a good role in that new world. And so there is a fear of inequality in that post-scarcity world. Other people are more positive again, but still they think, well, the transition's bound to go wrong. After all, many transitions which were attempted in history, failed to do anything like the good that was held out for them. Whether it's the Arab Spring, a lot of hope was in that, not much has been borne out. The revolutions in Libya seem to have gone very badly wrong. Previously in history, the various Marxist revolutions turned out to be real bloodbaths. And so there is naturally a fear that things will go badly wrong. And people, on the whole, they go back to their diminutive mindsets because they say, well, it's better we stick with the devil we know rather than embrace the risks of the devil we don't know. And after all the things that myself, fellow transhumanists, look to as great advantages in technology, things that I don't have time to go through in detail, but all these positive technological possibilities, which I believe are sources for good and sources to accelerate us getting to that post-scarcity world more quickly, they can also be seen by people in a fearful state as risks in their own way. Not directly, but the technologies behind these things could in many ways go wrong. So as we tamper with disease, we could unwittingly set forth disease pandemics. As we create more powerful energies, we could unleash weapons such as could be used for nuclear disaster. As we improve food with genetic modifications, there are the risks, real risks of some mistakes, and so we end up with worse food and diseases than before. As we manipulate nanotechnology for the sake of better compounds, better materials, there is the risks that some people look at as nanopollution, and we could destroy the whole ecosystem. And so on it goes. And I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these, but basically there are a lot of risks ahead, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly relate to this. And therefore, there are reasons for people to say, you know, this vision sounds good, but frankly, there are so many risks in it that they don't want to take them. So that's why we need to list these risks, list the downsides, and explain what we're going to do to stop these risks from turning out as bad as people fear. The final thing that might break our steps towards this path to post-scarcity is fragmentation. Is that we can all gather in a room today, and we can all basically like the messages that each other are saying, but then we fragment and we pull in different directions, and there's a fracturing of the movement for goodwill. And we have to look at why this fracturing and division takes place. In part, there's disagreements about the details of the vision. And different speakers will have different visions to some extent. We don't all have to agree the whole completely, but there needs to be a sufficient core, a sufficient analysis of the problems in society, and sufficient agreement as to what needs to be done. And when this vision it becomes weak, when it's just a kind of a pie in the sky, when it's just, hey, nanotech's going to solve everything, don't worry, when it's just in due course it's going to be all right, that fails. People see a lack of visible progress, and then they split up and they fragment, and this coalition for post-scarcity society may get bogged down. Indeed, many other coalitions have been bogged down in the past. And to handle that, we need, first of all, steps that people can see. There is short-term progress as well as the possibility of long-term progress. We need to be able to point to successes that can be celebrated in the short term. We need to spell out the risks. We also need to provide a kind of a human leadership, because sometimes the reason there's disagreement is, dare I say it, we do have disagreeable people, whether that's people who've just got tired, people who have got overwhelmed by the scale of the change. And we need, therefore, leadership to exert human aspects as well as just a vision of the technology. So, these were my lists of the main obstacles ahead. The inertia, which is rooted and is going to need powerful vision to displace it. The risks of fragmentation, the overall fear of the change, and the diminutive mindset. And I have offered us a vision which includes enhancements to green tech, biotech, nanotech, cognotech, health tech, artificial intelligence, robotics, and collaboration technology. A vision which has a wide scope for dramatically enhancing our lives, which can enhance and sustain a techno-progressive coalition. We need to do this with risk management and with a mindset that sees the best is very much possible, and that we could be living in a generation's time truly in a wonderful state in which we have set these difficulties behind us. So that is the vision I look forward to, and I'm very glad to be walking along this same path with you in this room and with fellow speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, David. That was a fantastic talk. So a couple of questions, please.
David, great talk, as always. So you and I debate this quite a lot. There are a huge number of people in the world who wouldn't buy into this vision because they don't understand science, they don't buy into the promise, they don't want to hand responsibility over to a different group of people who are driving the thinking. How do you start that conversation, whether it's a billionaire in India, a corrupt politician in Nigeria, or a completely myopic politician here in Britain? How do we start this conversation in a way that actually is going to get them on board, rather than thinking they've only got something to lose by buying into this model, that they own all the power?
So perhaps the most important technology here is this C, the collaboration technology, that we will be able to improve the way we are having this conversation. And some of it's there already. There are great videos which people can see by Federico, the one we saw at the beginning, by Jason Silva, by others that are spelling out on YouTube how this vision can be. Vision that can be presented in a way that makes people comfortable to set aside the things they're clinging on to from their past. We hold on to these in many ways antiquated religions or worldviews because we feel some level of comfort with them. But as we can see our aspirations and needs more reliably and more confidently realized by this techno-progressive vision, I think people will gradually make that change. But absolutely, it must be something they buy into rather than having enforced on them, which is why there needs to be human leadership here as well as just a vision of technology. Let's talk more at lunch about that.
Okay, another question?
Do you not think that the blockage to a lot of this is with the people that have the power, the capital and wealth, because it will potentially affect the status quo of their comfortable lifestyle, their position?
Yeah. So I know quite a lot of wealthy people. I know a lot of people in power and politicians. I don't want to stereotype any of them as just saying, well, because they're in power, therefore there are obstacles to this. Many of them do want to achieve a better world and society. However, you're right, many of them fear that they may end up in a lesser role in that future world. That was one of the 4 fears I had, the person thinking, well, you know, in this future world, I can see it might be good on the whole, but they may end up in a lesser state. So that's why we have to emphasize the abundance in this, and that the king and queens, if you go back a couple of centuries, the kings and queens seem to have a great lifestyle. Actually, most of the common people today, in many ways, we have better lifestyles than the kings and queens of the past. And so it'll be the same for the people in power today. They may think they're in a wealthy situation, but in many ways also they are psychologically and emotionally stunted. They're living in a fearful situation when their current situation is at risk from revolution and uproar and social alienation. So we want them to see that it will be better for them to embrace this change. And some of them are. If you haven't seen the thing about the pitchforks are coming, which is stated by one of the 1%, actually the 1% of the 1%, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, an investor on Amazon. Basically he said that although he is wealthy beyond the dreams of most people, he would far rather be participating in this kind of transition. We need to get these people on our sides, by the way. We shouldn't be making enemies out of them. Some of them can actually do a tremendous amount of good. We must show them how this collaboration will work.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Thank you very much.